Hello everyone and welcome to Bevins Builds, and today's video is going to be why it is okay to put standard lumber on concrete. First, before I go too far into the video and everybody jumps into the comments and starts berating me and everything I'm about to say, I do want to show, because I know a lot of people have pointed it out to me as well, as far as you don't want standard white lumber, white pine, whatever you want to call it. I've heard several people say several different things, but your 2x4s are generally pine. But anyway, it's still a good idea to use it against concrete, and as you can see here, I did do it here. I did do it on my exterior walls as well. I'm sorry, the lighting is horrible in here. I'm hoping you can tell. Most of my walls are now boarded up, so you really can't see it. But one of the very first videos I ever made on this channel, I was showing you different methods on how you could frame and seal up a wall. And with that particular video, I had never mentioned that you should start with all your sill plates, which is the very bottom plate for your wall anyway. All your sill plates should be treated lumber. But anyway, with my particular pole barn, I did what you're allowed to do to avoid having to use treated lumber on your sill plates. Even though, once again, as I showed in the first 30 seconds or so of the video, I did go back and put treated lumber on all my sill plates. So anyway, if you go into your code book, your building code book, and you find section R319, which is what I have displayed here, which is the protection against decay section, you will see down here where I have it circled, which is section 319-3, where it says sills and sleepers on a concrete or masonry slab that is in direct contact with the ground unless separated from such slab by an impervious moisture barrier. Well, here is what they mean by an impervious moisture barrier. Underneath my slab, before I started construction of my pole barn, actually during construction of my pole barn, but before they poured the concrete, I put my impervious vapor barrier, which, as you can see here, the entire ground is now separated from that concrete to give me that impervious barrier. What I used was visqueen. I forget the mills of it, but it was a very thick plastic that I used to make sure that the concrete was not in contact with the ground. But any and all parts of my pole barn that are in contact with the ground are absolutely and 100% treated lumber. Now, just because it's allowed doesn't necessarily mean you should do it. The reason I say that is I still don't think it's a bad thing. I still personally don't have a problem with doing it myself. But as so many people have pointed out and wanted to directly say things that it's not allowed and so on and so forth, yes, it is allowed. Even though I went back and I went ahead and pulled down the sections of walls that I did not use treated lumber and used treated lumber anyway. But like I said, I wanted to show you why and where and when it is allowed to use it. And again, that's if you do a vapor barrier. Something else I want to suggest is if you didn't do a vapor barrier under your concrete like I did, and you do want to still use standard lumber, another option, which really it's a much easier just to use a treated board. If you were going to do standard pine on a cement slab, and I don't have anything to give you an example of, but I can tell you about it. What you could do is underneath the board, before you build your wall up on top of it, what you could do is you can actually put under either plastic between the board and the concrete, or what's even better is you can use tar paper. But again, I do want to point out a lot of builders don't do it. It was something that I'm already aware of as far as the code, and I personally requested that they did it. Something else I do want to say though is, even if, like I said, in my case, well, right there is an extra sheet of treated lumber that I had sitting on the ground after I did everything. But even if you did follow the directions and you didn't use the wood, or you do use the wood anyway, I would still recommend a vapor barrier. As far as underneath the concrete anyway, for having the vapor barrier, regardless whether you use the treated or untreated lumber to do your walls, the reason I say I still recommend doing the vapor barrier before you pour your concrete is if you intend on using carpet or anything that is a wicking material, we'll call it, which wood, if you didn't put a vapor barrier down, does wick moisture into it. And what wicking is, it means it absorbs, I guess would be the best way to explain that. But if you're going to use any type of wicking material on your floor, whether you want to do a hardwood floor or you're going to do carpeting or whatever, you would want that vapor barrier down there, as otherwise your carpet is always going to be moist and mildewy. So even if you're going to build your building and use the treated lumber and all that, I still highly recommend doing a vapor barrier under your concrete. For example, if you were going to do a hardwood floor over the concrete, your hardwood floor would end up wicking in some of the moisture, and it would expand and it would buckle, and your hardwood floor would look horrible. So anyway, that is all for today's video. Like I said, I just wanted to really quickly point out the reasoning why you can use untreated lumber against concrete. Even though, like I said, I went ahead and I used treated lumber anyway, just as it's a cheap insurance policy, we'll call it. But anyway, that's all for Bevins Builds today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. As always, feel free to comment below with any questions or comments, and we'll see you next time on Bevins Builds.